the short-term vision for the city, I think regardless of who the mayoral candidate is, that short-term, there's a lot of work done that has to be done that has less to do with my vision and more to do with what's already on the books as a result of council's approval and the mayor's approval. So I see the first 2 years of anyone who becomes the mayor of the city of Charleston to make sure that they carry out those projects that have already been approved. And it's pretty substantial. And I'm talking about projects such as the Magnolia Project that's on the peninsula. I'm talking about West Edge, which is also on the peninsula. I'm talking about the planned use for the redevelopment of West Ashley, especially not the Citizen, but the Old Citadel Mall site, which I think gives us great potential for a renaissance West Ashley. I think West Ashley needs a facelift, and I think Citadel Mall gives us an opportunity to create a downtown feeling in West Ashley, creating a living space, learning space, and earning space. So for me, West Ashley will afford us the opportunity to recreate it and to have a renaissance, because I think it needs one. So I think the next 2 years or so, as the mayor of the city of Charleston, those 3 major projects, in addition to what's occurring along Morrison Drive in the Upper Peninsula, would have to continue to be a part of what needs to be implemented. I think that the number one, well, not one, but one of the priorities of the next mayor has to deal with affordability. Affordability is in crisis, not just in Charleston, but in most cities throughout the country. So I think that the next mayor has a responsibility to address that issue head on. And when I say affordability, I'm not just talking housing, I'm also talking wages. And I think the city of Charleston has set an example by raising its entry-level wages to $10.16 an hour. That is something that I would try to push throughout other government entities as well as throughout the private industry. As for housing, out of all the candidates that are running, I'm the only candidate that can prove what I can do in terms of developing affordable housing, not just in the city of Charleston, but throughout the state of South Carolina. As the director of HUD, we were able to bring millions of dollars, for instance, to North Charleston, where we gave them $31 million to develop their Horizon Village, one where we were able to do mixed income development. Because I clearly think that when you concentrate the poor, that all you do is perpetuate poverty. And we do have several projects within the city, and specifically on the peninsula, where I think we need to address those concentrations of poverty and do mixed income developments. As for density, I think that what we need to do in terms of when we think about affordability in housing, we need to think about it regionally. if we limit ourselves just to the city of Charleston and not think about the region as a whole, then I think we are going to get stuck, because the city of Charleston cannot do it alone. I think that the plans that we've been working with Michelle on to try to come up with a regional housing plan, I think it's worthy. I also think that we need to make sure that whatever housing that we develop, that those units are close to the employment centers, because while you can build affordable housing way out where land is cheaper, when you weigh the cost of transportation and other things, you're really not addressing the serious problem of limited incomes so that properties can be available. So what I want to be is the housing mayor as well as the education mayor. I want to make sure that we provide the kind of affordability so that the artist community, okay, so that people of lower incomes can afford to appreciate what the city of Charleston has become. People talk a lot about gentrification, but gentrification in this city took place 40 years ago. It's a bit late to start talking about gentrification now. What we need to be talking about is how do we replenish the affordability, not just on the peninsula, but within the 100 square miles of the city. We've had some successes on Daniel Island. 7 Farms is a project that was funded while I was the director of HUD. Most of the affordable housing projects on Daniel Island were done while I was the director of HUD. So I bring to the table more than a toot. I bring the fruit of my labor. And I hope that the residents of this city clearly understand that we don't have time for experimentation. We have to bring a mayor in that can hit the street, hit running. And for me, affordability is going to be a key issue of my administration. I clearly know how to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars to any city. Just take the Medical University of South Carolina, for instance. Under my watch, we brought the highest FHA mortgage in the country to build Ashley Towers. When people think of HUD, they think of Section 8 public housing. So in combination of all those experiences, I clearly think that I am the one that will be able to deal with the density issue, because that was your question, density issues. And I do think that we are going to have to develop more dense communities. But I do think that we have to do that creatively. And by creatively is the more density that we allow, then the more green space that developer has to bring to bear. The more density that we allow, the more business opportunities for people who would normally not have an opportunity to create a business. The more density that we put forward, again, make sure that our zoning is in such a way that we give bonuses when people are going to do things that are going to be more sustainable, more green, and create more affordability for everyone within the city. Well, I think that the Conservation League probably knows better than anyone my record in sustainability. In many cases, I've been the sole supporter of many of the conservation projects throughout the city. And we can take cruise control, for instance. I was the lone council member who introduced legislation to try to regulate the industry. the lone council member who submitted a resolution with regard to shore power. As the chairman of the Sustainability Advisory Committee, as chairman, I introduced resolutions with regard to wind, with regard to solar and other energy matters. So for me, I think the proof is in the pudding. I think I'm the only mayoral candidate at this point that has a track record in these areas. I'm the only mayoral candidate that I feel is ready from day one, not just to take on the conservation issues, but to take on most of the issues in the city. Again, I think what makes me unique as a mayoral candidate is that I currently sit on the board of the West Edge or Horizon project. I'm the only city council member with the mayor, as well as our CFO, who are the only city persons represented on that board. I am a voting member of the board, and the West Edge project is in my district. It's in District 6. So I'm very, very concerned about how that project proceeds. I'm familiar with the argument regarding Gadsden Creek. I've sat in on the public hearings. I think it's DHEC had a public hearing about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I thought that there were some very sound arguments for us to try to take a look at whether or not Gadsden Creek can in fact be reclaimed. There's also argument that most of it's gone. Well, to me, that's not to say that we shouldn't do whatever we can to make sure that if there's something salvageable, that we should salvage it. And I think at our next board meeting, I'm sure that that issue is going to come up. And I will be one of the vocal people who say, is it true that it can't be reclaimed? Is it true that it can't naturally be incorporated as a part of the West Edge project and make the West Edge project a little more sustainable? So without being the mayor of the city, I currently have substantial involvement in that project. So we don't have to wait until January to determine what actions I would take. I think that the public will be able to see what I do between now and January with regard to that project.